We know that as a company, we, with our products, are fighting some of the biggest obstacles to living a meaningful life that we're facing today. And they can be positively influenced with the right nutrition and healthy lifestyle. And what we're seeing is that around the world, governments are seeing the problem. But they're saying they need our help. They need the help of private industry to fight these problems, to end the trend. And now, we are proud to say the SAB and NeoLife, we're committed to making a difference. And so I want to ask you first, we'll start with John. What are your views on the role that we can play in ending the trend?
Well, we can end it. Okay. We can't end it for all 7 billion folks on the planet tomorrow afternoon. Okay, because that's 7 billion folks after all. And I know Louis expects to have that many people in his downline someday. It isn't going to happen that quick. But the evidence has been there all along. It's only the disease statistics that have popped up in the last decade or so that have driven us to understand that the evidence about the importance of nutrition to health has always been there. You know, we pioneered a great deal of it, but it's always been there. It's just the realization now that it's got us in this really deep, dark spot, a place where chronic disease has the potential to disrupt society as we know it. And I think that when I think about what we can do, the message that you all can deliver, remember, you're the amplifier of the SAB's voice, the message that you can deliver is so fundamentally valuable to the future of humankind that if you don't get up every day and feel as motivated about this as I do, take a motivation pill. Because it's a message we need to get out. And only when we get it out will we get that done. And it's within our grasp. Maybe we'll only get to 1 million people next year, or maybe next month. I don't know how aggressive you guys are going to be. But, you know, 1 million, if you get 1 million people, what's the power of one? You know? In very few years, we're trying to find people on Mars to tell the story about, because we will have exhausted the population. So it's really compelling. There's no question at all that we are going to be able to have a valuable impact. The empowerment, the knowledge and the tools we have are critical to that fight.
No, Kendra, I totally concur with John there. And I think that, you know, what is so remarkable and so unique about this company, this NeoLife family, is that we have this ability through the network to touch so many people around the world and bringing such absolutely unique product solutions. I mean, products that are so far ahead of their time that are really going to help in this prevention, this, you know, the emphasis on prevention. And if only the governments would put more financial means into prevention of chronic diseases, we would be not where we are today. But just to emphasize, such unique products, way ahead of their time.
Yeah, you know, Diane, Kendra, just to take the example, say, of carotenoid complex, you know, we knew that the consumption of these fruits and vegetables, highly colored fruits and vegetables, were lacking in our diets. So we knew that there was a human need to supplement carotenoid compounds from these colorful fruits and vegetables. This is an important class of antioxidants lacking in our diets. So what we did is we had this vision of taking a diverse group of fruits and vegetables and concentrating those carotenoid compounds from them so that we had a broad spectrum of carotenoid compounds from foods in meaningful amounts. So we took these concentrates from a unique process that we developed, and John heavily involved in that too, and we combined them with ingredients such as extra virgin olive oil to enhance the bioavailability so that you can uptake them, so they'll work. But we didn't just stop there. We actually tested to make sure that they will work. So we did this, and this testing is unique in the industry, which is a leading edge, way ahead of our time. And what we did in a clinical setting is prove the bioavailability of those carotenoid compounds from carotenoid complex, and we proved their efficacy. We showed that we could reduce the oxidation within cells. We showed that we could reduce oxidation in cellular membranes. And we also showed, and this is unique, an increase in our immune capacity. And all of this from a vision to help end the trend and to help us and help you play a role in ending the trend of chronic diseases.
In a sentence, why is oxidation so important to address?
Because what that does is these reactive oxygen species that are created from the environment, from pollutants, or from our own metabolism, they just want to react with anything, and they can help break down the cell membrane, which then reduces the efficacy, makes the cell sick, sick cells, sick body.
And I guess it starts that downward spiral that leads to chronic
diseases,
Yeah.
yep. And anyway, that approach that we took with carotenoid complex is the very same approach that we take in all of our product development.
Last year, I think some of you, or maybe a lot of you, were at the convention and we introduced what product? Do you remember? Glucose balance. What impresses me about NeoLife and the care that's taken is to look at ending the trend, and if I pick out on top of my mind what's going on here in the US and worldwide, is an accelerating rate, even exponentially accelerating rate of individuals suffering from poor blood sugar control due to insulin resistance. Your hormone isn't working well, and developing into type 2 diabetes. That means greater risk for heart disease, other metabolic disorders, and in particular for cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, forms of dementia. So what NeoLife does is takes credible science and puts it into a practical solution that will help people with a very serious up-and-coming, and I mean not just up-and-coming for people that are adults. We see the risk for type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance in teenagers, in 20-year-olds. This was never talked about before, say 10 years ago. So I really appreciate the science that goes into, and you can feel confident about the credible science that goes into practical solutions to end the trend.
Awesome. Well said, everyone. So I'd like to now dive into a few more specific areas of concern that we're facing today, things that are going to limit our impact. And I mean, starting with the mental health crisis. It's huge. The balance of health and our mind. And so we often talk about chronic disease on the physical side of things, like, for instance, nutrition and heart health. But it seems to be a really growing area of concern in how our mind is affected by lack of nutrition. And just a couple example statistics. About 1 in 10 adults over age 65 has Alzheimer's. And it's now the 6th leading cause of death nationwide. And after you're diagnosed, clinical diagnosis, the life expectancy on average is 7 years. Huge problem. Not to mention, fun fact, out-of-pocket cost of dementia patients. In their last 5 years of life, it was over $61,500. Out of pocket. That's the stuff that insurance doesn't cover. So it's very limiting. And it's predicted that by 2050, over 155 million people in the US will have dementia. These are shocking facts. And that's just one area in this mental health crisis. So what role can good nutrition play in supporting the health and balance of the mind? We'll start with you, Liz.
Well, I think that's something that all of us probably recognize. If I say, what's good for your heart? You tell me exercise, you talk about eating a diet low in refined carbohydrates, healthy fats, and we have certain nutrients we know, like omega-3s, that support heart health. We're now in an area of very active research, understanding that brain health is similar to heart health, that you need proper nutrients, you need physical activity. In fact, various researchers have identified specific nutrients, omega-3s, polyphenols, and a dietary plan similar to the Mediterranean diet. One researcher, Dr. Morris from Rush University, has come up with a eating plan that emphasizes berries, whole grains, seafood. Is this sounding like some things that NeoLife has been saying for a long time? And with that diet plan showed a 35% risk reduction in developing Alzheimer's disease. Very, very impressive research, and I think maybe Diane can talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really incredible at the moment, and it actually started out in Europe in 2003 when they really dug deeper into why the Mediterranean pattern diet was so protective against cardiovascular conditions. And then there was an enormous, the trials have been running now for 15 years. We're still getting publications coming out. Basically what they did is Spanish researchers, the whole consortium, they defined the Mediterranean type diet pattern, which is absolutely the same thing as Liz has just talked about: the berries, the fruits and vegetables, the more whole grains, the healthy fats, the fish. Everything sounds familiar to us, but the dietary pattern of the Mediterranean regions were basically, they were analyzed, people were tracked for the disease conditions that they have been suffering from for the past 15 years. And not only was the adherence to this Mediterranean dietary pattern protective for heart health, but it was extremely protective against dementias. And publications are coming out, and countries in Europe are now translating this Mediterranean pattern into their own regional, local diets so that they can try to make their people eat healthier. One example relating to the brain and brain health, and it's incredible. This was a study from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. They showed, the researchers showed reduced brain shrinkage between ages 73 and 76. So obviously, as we go through life, we want to keep that healthy brain volume. Very important to our cognitive abilities. Now, just eating this Mediterranean, this diet, this healthy diet pattern, this healthy style, was actually shown over just a 3-year period to reduce the brain shrinkage. I mean, that is just so powerful. Just published in 2017. Yeah.
It's really astounding. You know, I'm the sort of summarize it all in simple terms guy. And I'll go back, you know, we've always said you are what you eat, right? Everybody knows that, right? You are what you eat. And that's true. What you are is what you eat. But science is showing more and more, that it's also who you are is what you eat. In other words, the nutrient content of your diet affects the brain in a way that affects your self, your behavior. Now, we see it in the data. For example, at the point of conception, we know that if a mother has a child and there's an abundant amount of omega-3s, that child develops them more healthily than otherwise, is born, goes along and grows along a cognitive pathway towards, you know, through neonatal into toddlerhood and up into school. And that's pretty well defined. But we also know that when they're not present, that gets compromised. Babies who are born to mothers who have inadequate amounts of omega-3 are more likely to have behavioral disorders than babies who are born to mothers who have an adequate amount of omega-3. Okay, and those behavioral disorders are not really their fault. It may be ADHD, somewhere on the spectrum. ADHD is not a thing anymore, it's a spectrum of things. You find that language skill development, research has shown that when omega-3s are deficient in mom's diet, that child struggles with language skill development, develops the skill on a much slower pace than you would expect for the norm. Okay? And even things like their risk of asthma. You would think, well, what's asthma got to do with all of this? But it's all sort of connected to the roles that these things play. Now, when, we've known about this mind-brain connection, that nutrients, the brain is really the organ, and the mind is the thing that lives inside that organ. And you can't separate the two. That if you don't treat the brain well, you can't expect the mind, the psyche, to be well. And it's been shown in studies done on populations of people who are in prison for sort of behavioral crimes, that when they get all of a sudden do a bunch of omega-3s in their diet, that all changes for them. That's a different study. But the thing that's key to this is something that we've known for a long time. There are a particular group of nutrients that play critical roles in the function of this organ called the brain. And when you remember that when we introduced Tray, for example, we made a big sort of emphasis on the role that these things play, that these compounds, these berry compounds that have been mentioned before, these anthocyanins and things like that, have this unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Not everything gets in up here. The brain's pretty protective, okay? And they have the unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. And when they're there in abundance, they have the unique ability of maintaining healthier brain tissue than when they are there in deficient quantities or perhaps even absent. So these sorts of things, these understandings of how the brain, the physical nature of the brain, what it needs and how to protect it, and then how that manifests itself into behavior and learning disorders and so on, literally the function of the brain, are fundamental to how we develop products like Tray.
Right, and just taking Tray as an example, I mean, we really have some amazing products based on our knowledge of polyphenols and our polyphenol research. And so we decided we wanted to take that knowledge into a product, into a unique liquid form. Somewhat greater bioavailability in that format. So, but in order to do that, we had to develop the processes to effectively capture these polyphenols and make sure that they would be present intact in the final product. And so we did that, and we developed Tray. Okay, that's fine, but now we have to test, make sure these polyphenols are present. So the first thing we did on the product when we developed it, we tested for its antioxidant potential. And that antioxidant potential proved to be very high. So I said, great, that means the polyphenols have to be there. So we developed some tests, and we did a test on the total polyphenol scan. And we said, look, they're there, and they're in great amounts. So then we decided, okay, we're going to drill down. Let's be really specific, and let's start looking for some specific polyphenol compounds called punicalagins that come from the unique pomegranates that we're using in Tray. And we had to tweak some analytical methodology, so it's somewhat unique for us. And we found these punicalagins in huge amounts, higher than we thought we had actually put into the product.
11 times more than pomegranate juice.
Exactly. So, and higher than we thought, well, than we had actually intended, but because of the unique ingredients and processes that we have, these things are intact and they're in the product. So just sort of an example of all the testing that we do when we develop a product, so that we know when you consume Tray, you're getting a potent punch of those polyphenols for your cerebral support.
Awesome. Does anyone else feel like grabbing a shot of Tray right now? And now for those of us that can't move to the Mediterranean, that's pretty much what's in Pro Vitality, right? They're eating a lot of whole grains, fish, fruits and vegetables.
Yep, polyphenols.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't take a vacation there. And just to summarize, also we heard a lot of heart health mentioned here in relation to the brain. And the brain actually uses 20% of the blood that's pumped by the heart. So in effect, you take care of your heart, you're taking care of your brain. And now, how about, well, Diane, she might be really upset with me later for bringing this up, but she has an incredible amount of research in her background. And one of the areas that she's studied in the past has been the role of nutrition and serotonin in the gut. See your face?
You're right.
So I'll just mention
this.
that she was one of the first scientists to discover that the serotonin production actually does happen in the gut, and was ridiculed for it.
Well, I'm annoyed with Kendra. Very annoyed, because that was a project from the 80s, and it wasn't the late 80s, it was the early 80s. So I've just told everyone how old I might be. But I worked in I think it was called a psychobiology and nutrition lab. And they were very much into studying the brain, and they'd been working on neurotransmitters and the influence of things like choline and neurotransmitter synthesis, memory function. But one particular, my mentor at the time was particularly interested in serotonin, what we call the feel-good factor. And he had me investigating and researching and isolating from our digestive system serotonin. So I developed a method to do that, and my university project was on that, and I had to defend that in front of a group of people who were mostly disbelieving in the science. But it's now that we know that actually we have to take care of the gut, because the gut, the digestive system, is our, some say the second brain, but some say it's actually the first. we have this two-way communication between the digestive system, the gut, and the brain, and it's very much a hot topic at the moment.
Thank you, Diane, for commenting on that. So, if you know someone who struggles with these mood or brain health issues, what should they be focusing on?
Well,
product-wise.
You're asking me again, Kendra. Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, we've touched on omega-3, and we've touched on, you know, what our core strengths, two of our core strengths, the omega-3s and the polyphenol, the whole area, they are today the hottest topics and the biggest weapons fighting the metabolic health crisis that leads to chronic disease and degenerative brain conditions. The interactions of polyphenols and omega-3 work at the level of the gut, in the brain, throughout the body. These are such big areas, and we have such a big advance in these areas.
And we want to take care of our gut. We already heard John talk about acidophilus and how leading edge that product is as well. So, well, exciting stuff. And today we also have a much deeper understanding of the role that nutrition plays in chronic disease, both the body and the mind. And so we've been at this leading edge for years. We've been pioneers, ahead of our time. Can you give us examples of some of the ways that we've been ahead of our time in the products that we've developed? Starting with whoever would like to start.
No, okay.
John.
They don't know what they just did. Anyway, you know, I spent a good deal of time up here sort of pointing out and walking us through this really exciting and elaborate history of scientific discovery that we have. And I think that being at the leading edge means a bunch of different things. Being at the leading edge means that you develop solid science that's irrefutable. Okay? We've got a lot of that because we've been at the leading edge a long time. Being at the leading edge means that you develop products that are so fundamental that the need for those products and the nutrients they contain never goes away. These are not nutrients of the year type things. These are fundamental phytonutrients or other nutrients like omega-3s, fundamental to how our biochemistry works, that are being robbed from us as we industrialize the food supply, are continually being diminished in the food because they're disappearing from the soil or the soil is disappearing, the soil changes are impacting the quality and quantity of the nutrients in the plants that grow there. All of these sorts of things are challenges. The things we do are sustainable, meaning that they're going to be there. I can tell you that looking back, hot topics today, omega-3s and polyphenols, we were talking omega-3s in the late 1970s. Okay? We were talking carotenoids in the 80s. Those are still hot topics today. I opened up my little Science Digest thing yesterday, and one of the top headlines said, "More evidence continues to substantiate that carotenoids protect vision." Okay, well, we said that 20 years ago or so. But it's still a hot topic today, as is omega-3s, as are polyphenols. And what that's important to you is to realize that we were there with this a long time before anybody else. It's because that defines the leading edge. The leading edge is where it's happening. Everything else that's going on, you're in the wake. Okay? You're in the jet stream back there someplace. It's a fun place to be if you're not really committed to understanding and developing new and better tools to help people. But, you know, we've been there forever, and we will be there forever. Right now, the leading edges that we're looking at and thinking about is so far out in front of the conversation we're having in this room today that you should feel really good about that.
With regard to being at the leading edge, so my interest is research analytics and how the research analytics and what we learn points the way to the future. So on the omega-3 front, and it's been that since I've been with NeoLife since 1995. So on the omega-3 example, so on the older omega-3s products, and as John said, we've been talking about omega-3 since the 70s. So we did a lot of omega-3 fatty acid analysis on those products. So we already knew that we had all 8 omega-3 fatty acids in those products. But it was how to really get them standardized so they were consistent and more, what I call emphasized, so that they were meaningful amounts. So that research pointed the direction towards how we had to develop unique processes that led to Salmon Oil Plus. All 8 omega-3 fatty acids standardized in meaningful amounts so that we got the whole spectrum of omega-3s that are important for human nutrition. And this was done through leading edge research analytics that we've been doing for decades. And that points to where we are at the leading edge.
I want to finish up as we talk about why NeoLife is on the leading edge. And as the newest scientific advisory board member, I've been in the world of nutrition for decades. I've been approached by vitamin, mineral, dietary supplement companies. And every single one I've ever spoken to about getting involved, they all are a me too. Like, we're going to come up with the latest and greatest. We're developing this. We saw this in the news, and it's basically, as John said, following the wake. And when John, bless his heart, worked with me, we met, we talked on the phone, he sent me papers, a year-long courtship, if I may say. Yeah. It's been lovely. And every time I opened up an email, opened up a document, wow, I know about this research. I had no idea that this is what NeoLife was doing. I feel so confident about every single product that has been developed, is in the pipeline, exciting things, that takes the whole body into consideration, whole foods into consideration. Never before have I seen an organization, a company, a family look at the synergy, the importance of nutrient synergy, and the importance of bioavailability. It really is so key. And by the way, if you wanted to know, I got TSA pre-check for my flight home. Yay.
Sounds like it's love.
Yeah.
Good courtship,
Yeah.
John.
I love her brain.
Diane, would you like to add?
Well, I think I already said it before when I mentioned that we have, with our heritage in the polyphenol area and in the omega-3 area, we are at the leading edge in those areas, and we have, you know, an incredible foundation upon which to build. We were there, you know, we were there 20, 30 years before everyone else, and we have that solid foundation. These are really hot topics today in tackling the lifestyle-related chronic diseases around the world. These polyphenols, omega-3 synergies are really, really key. And I think that having this strength already for many, many years is you know, it just makes us so excited to be scientists at this point in time. We're poised.
AKA, watch this space. Because I can't say anything about the clinical studies going on right now, but we are finding some pretty exciting things, and Diane and the SAB are leading that charge. So now, I'm convinced our science is strong, the strongest out there. But now, what does the future really look like? Can you give us a glimpse into what we can expect to see?
Well, I would love to start by saying, because education is my thing, and I want you to all know that education is power for you. When you have good, solid, credible background information and know how to talk to your customers to make informed choices, and for you, it really is all about credible information and education. And we're very aware that there's scads of misinformation that some of the people, many of the people that you're talking to have access to right on their phone. And how do we go about addressing what's real, what's factual, what's credible, and to have all the confidence in us that we are developing some really exciting tools to help empower you with educational sources and resources to inform you and to inform your customers.
For the future, you can look forward to a robust product pipeline, because our advanced, leading-edge research analytics are going to continue to point the way towards product development, towards unique products, and also products that are verified for their purity, their potency, and their efficacy, and will deliver the nutrients as we intend and that you will need.
And I'm really looking forward with great excitement to what we are doing now with, you know, today we have new methods available that we can look inside the body, we can look inside our cells and see what's going on. So we have our fantastic, we have our decades-old pioneering products like carotenoid complex, like the flavonoid complex, all of these incredible products, and we have done many clinical studies along the way. But today, there are even more techniques where we can visualize and look at things. We can look at how the brain lights up with polyphenols. You know, we can look at things in such greater depth. So I'm looking forward to substantiating further the great products we have, and then going on with testing the efficacy of the exciting products that we've just launched or we're about to launch. So we have a program of research that we are building on, and we're just so grateful to be scientists at this particular point in time.
Yeah, you know about our history. You know what's got us here, how we are able to tell you these stories and provide this compelling evidence of the benefits of the path we've been on, expect more of the same. We're not going to change course, okay? We have no plan to change course. We've got some surprises for you, but it wouldn't be the first time we've surprised you with knowledge and understanding that, you know, it's going to blow people away. I remember, just as a little aside, I remember talking with your Uncle Bob one day when we were developing the carotenoid complex, and he said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's carotenoids. We should call it carotenoid complex." He said, "No one's going to be able to, what's carotenoid? That's too complicated a word. Can't we call it something else?" Because at that time, carotenoids were a new word. There was a new word. We were pioneering an area of science that was so emerging that only a few of the scientists had any idea what you were talking about. Yet today, these things are fundamental, and we've been on that path and will stay on that path forever. I'd like to just point out a couple of things. We have a very unique group up here, but the Scientific Advisory Board, when you look at the totality of that group, when you look at Dr. Hooper and Dr. Shepard and Dr. Karugi and Dr. Samoji and the group that's up here, there's over 200 years of science involved in that group. And that, all of those 200 years represents time with NeoLife. They got a lot of other years out there and getting ready to become part of our team, but when you add that up, the expertise, the time that that Scientific Advisory Board has been involved with the company, focused on the company's challenges, it represents more than 200 years of intellectual, academic, and scientific power. That's outstanding when you think about it. And I can tell you that it doesn't stop there. You know, we are constantly looking for new minds. This is a perfect example, okay? This is a perfect example. We are constantly looking for new minds, constantly looking for new voices, constantly looking for champions, champions of this idea, champions that can continue to lead us and motivate us and take us into the future and take all of you into the future, because only with that sort of goal are we ever going to get our job done. And I want you to know that thanks to Kendra and before her father Jerry, the company is dedicated to this too. This is not an inexpensive, can do it for nothing operation. Okay? The type of science we do requires that you better be invested into the idea, because you're going to be invested in getting it done. And I think that says a lot about the company too. Right? It would be easy for the company to say, "Oh, just create some stuff that sounds really good and don't spend all that money." Really, is it that important? But they value what we do because they value you. They value the message, they value the goal that you have, and they value the impact that you can have on ending the trend out there. So be proud. Okay, be proud.
Wow. We are going to be the single biggest force behind ending the trend. And the best is yet to come. Thank you so much to our SAB.